Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Franchise Advisory Board. I'm here with MJ from Topfire Media. However, you may not know this, MJ's true identity is Matthew Jonas. And those of you, it's funny, I've known you as MJ forever, and then I realized you had a real name behind those initials. Uh, so MJ, guys, he's the president and co-founder of Topfire Media. This is an elite marketing group that does a lot of work in franchise development marketing, even unit level marketing, PR, fully integrated, agency model. Very talented group. I've worked with them quite a bit, and I've got MJ on here because he's a 25-year vet in the digital marketing world, which means in the beginning there was MJ. Like this is like digital marketing wasn't like a big thing until like the late 90s, really the early 2000s, mid 2000s. So maybe we'll do some origin story with you, MJ.
We should.
Right. Tell us a little bit about yourself, MJ. A little bit about Topfire, a little bit more about you as people get to know you before we jump into the topic.
Okay. Yeah. I'll start with a little bit about me. As Dave said, 25 years in the digital media world. Once upon a time, back in '97, I was one of the original 12 guys that actually helped start and launch Home Advisor. Originally it was called handymanonline.com until it was purchased in 1999. So it's a cool little fact that most people don't know, or from that standpoint. I played high school American Legion and college baseball, which I know it's something that me and you, Dave, we connect on. We both love, obviously, baseball. We can talk about baseball all day long. A little bit more about Topfire Media. We've been around now for over 10 years. We are a sister company of iFranchise Group, which gives a tremendous amount of credibility. They are by far one of the best or the best franchise consulting firms on the continent. Topfire, we've worked with over 320 plus brands over that 10 years. We've brought and attracted people from the franchise universe to come work at Topfire at the agency, which I think is it's the reputation that we've built over the years. We have a proprietary list of about 45,000 multi-unit franchisees and single unit operators that we get to use as a leverage for lookalike audiences for both Facebook and Google, which, Dave, you get to see on the other side of the leads coming in through the brands that we share and work together on. And that's a big part of our success as well. It's, we're helping emerging brands, mid-market brands, and legacy brands with their franchise development marketing and public relations. And, we, as every company, we continue to evolve. And one of the things that we've evolved into, we're not a franchise sales organization, but we work on that side with, each one of the brands, on the franchise development sales. Our job is to make the franchise sales folks look incredibly great, making sure that we're getting input and feedback from them on a monthly basis on all the quality leads that are coming through. And again, we know that, they're going to fail 98% of the time. So, we got to fail forward, right? We got to learn from those failures and learn from the leads. And that feedback and those relationships with the franchise sales folks is very important as the relationship we have with each brand and on the marketing side as well. But we are one of the only full service digital media, public relations, web development, and hyper local franchisee agencies, in our industry. And this is all we do. We play in the franchising, deep end, and we're excited to be here and excited to have this conversation with you today.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you. As you guys can probably tell, if I were to let MJ go for a while, he could probably tell you a lot more about what they do. And but the reason why I wanted him to actually explain that to you is because the topic today is about best practices in franchise development marketing. And because this is different, right? There are a lot of folks, we've had other people on, and while they can do local marketing as well, right? At the unit level, you guys are really experts in this. And I see it because on our end, we're the receiving end of the lead flow.
Yeah, you are.
When we first started working with each other, you were ramping up some accounts, and I was like, and they'd say, yeah, I got like 200 new leads coming in a month now. I was like, you just started. Like normally there's a bigger ramp than that. So anyway, you guys have got some great experience. That lookalike list is an amazing asset for your clients and for you guys. But let's shift gears and let's talk about kind of the challenges, if you don't mind, as we lead into this. Like what you've worked with a lot of folks who have done a lot of different things to try to generate leads for FranDev. FranDev is this tricky beast, right? If you look at the data in the industry, everyone says, "Oh, well, if you're doing a great job, 1 out of 100 leads will close." That's probably like the worst out of any industry ever on the planet.
Ever on the planet. Yeah.
It's bad. So when I first came to this world, I thought, you got to be kidding me. Like, and so, but you guys uh, understand it. You're able to produce better results than that. I guess we are too on the receiving end, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about the challenges. Like, what are you seeing as key challenges that people have in the industry as they're trying to figure out emerging or established brand, this whole FranDev beast?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are definitely things, and that we see on a daily basis, right? I'm lucky enough, like we've talked about, Dave, in the past, that my job is I get to talk with the top 5% of all businesses in the world, right? Anyone who's even thinking about franchising or who's just franchised has to have a considerable amount of experience and success in their day-to-day business. And some of the things that carry on to the franchise development side, it always starts with the franchise development website, right? Most brands just want to, throw a landing page or a single unit or a single page on their consumer site, not put too much work into it, and they call that their franchise presence. That's probably the single biggest thing that I see on a daily basis. Are franchise brands that are not embracing, building out and developing a franchise development website that really speaks to their audience. And there's a certain way to design and develop franchise development websites based on our experience and the vast amount of data that we've collected, not only the last 10 years, but we also are strategic partners with a lot of folks in the industry that, we also, generate this data to help our clients out. And the biggest thing that we have found on a franchise development home/landing page is you have to answer the 4 or 5 basic questions that they're answering or they're searching for, right? Once you can do that, you can start that engagement part. We teach our clients content engage. But you have to be able to answer some questions up front for them to want to even fill out a form, download content, or even, jump on a phone call with you, any specific brand. But that's the biggest challenge that we see. And most people don't realize that a franchise development website's a living, breathing marketing tactic and tool, right? It's ever changing, it's ever evolving. This little company called Google changes 30 to 40 times, a month, and 300 to 400 times on a yearly basis. And if you're not adapting to those changes, your site's going to suffer, which means you're going to have less visibility and less searchability, which means your advertising leads are going to become more expensive. Your cost of acquisition increases if you're not leveraging your franchise development website and organic SEO.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a minute, because a lot of people get scared when they say, "Oh my gosh, like I got to keep up with Google. This is difficult." We just recorded a whole podcast last time. It hasn't been published yet about like the Google algorithm changes, and organic and things like that, and PPC. Well, I'm sure we'll touch on that a bit today. But the one thing that I see a lot of franchisors kind of goof on is they just try to like roll their franchise site into like the big site, and it's like, oh, anything else a franchise, and talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a bit of a mistake, or it's short-sighted not to have a dedicated focus on this franchising website. Can you share a little bit of insight around that, and maybe an example of don't drop any names?
Yeah, I can't drop names.
How have you seen it done poorly, and then what's the impact when they do it right? I think that's
so when you start to look at that, so from just best practices and Topfire, one of the things, we're a Google Premier Partner. So essentially that means we have a phone number into Google that gets picked up every time based on the amount of advertising dollars that our clients spend and the amount of SEO clients that we work with Google on, right? So one of the things, and this is one of the things that also has misled a lot of brands, is that sometimes you don't necessarily need to carve out and develop a second WordPress installation for your franchise development site. It really depends on your domain strength, right? If your corporate website is generating tremendous amount of traffic, you have, your domain has been probably, around 10 years plus, and you do a lot of great things on the corporate side to make your website obviously pop with Google, then you can actually just build a subdomain off of your corporate website. So that's one of the things that as we meet and as we develop, 40 to 50 franchise development websites every year, we look at that first, right? We look at the stats and data that Google tells us about their corporate site. Now, if they don't have that, which is going to be most emerging brands, right? Some of the best practices is really, it's purchasing the right URLs, right? The 3 recommendations that we always give is, one is own your conceptname.com, franchise your conceptname.com, and then your concept name franchising.com should be the 3 URLs that you purchase. And even again, you're going to use one of the URLs. You need to then still hang on to those two other URLs, or someone as smart as me, perhaps, will figure that out, that you have not purchased those other URLs, and that your competitors can buy your organic traffic for you. So that's one of the things that, we talk about, in our franchise, consultations. We talk about in our onboarding with our clients, that these are things that they have to, obviously look into right away and make sure they're taking care of that. The other part that a lot of people don't realize too is that just to build a franchise development website, it needs to be on a mobile friendly platform, right? We know without even looking into your analytics that 70+% of the folks coming to your franchise development site are going to be coming off of their mobile phone. So it has to be designed for mobile first, then for the desktop. The other part that most people don't realize either is they build this great looking site and they forget about conversion-based marketing. Now, say I'm old enough to know, like back when I first got into marketing, there were still yellow pages. And Google didn't have an advertising platform. AdWords wasn't around. It was actually the Overture, advertising tool for Google. But classic conversion-based marketing tactics are what wins still today. And what I mean by that is that you should have some kind of downloadable content on your homepage above the fold, so that if you do target the right audience, that audience engages, likes what they have to see, likes the information, is interested in your brand, they will download that. And one, you get to collect all that great information. It goes into the CRM. And then you have a prospect that has a lot of great information. And if it's written correctly, it should answer a lot of basic sales questions, but it should prompt bigger buying and opportunity questions for the franchise sales team. So it's fantastic. And it's a lead magnet at the end of the day. It's for the sales funnel and for the lead generation top of the funnel opportunities.
MJ, let me interrupt you and ask you a question about that for a minute, because content gating, right? I remember when the pendulum swung. Really, yeah. It was like, hey, I want to know about a car, and they're like, oh, you like cars? If you want to download this information about what a car is, then fill out this form. I'm like, well, sort of, but I really want to look at that new Corvette. And so it was just like they were trying to gate everything. So like describe the right balance that you've seen there, because even CMOs of franchise brands listening in that might need some advice around this, that grew up in that era when that was like hot. And then, but there's a balance there. So how do you balance value versus capturing the data of the individual? And also let's talk about that. And I've got one more question for you about where it fits in the funnel.
And that's a great question. It was probably about 5 years ago when the pendulum changed from, if you look at like the 90s was the information era, like everything you could get, every kind of information ever, created. And that's how we wanted it as marketeers, right? And then we started to learn, we started to evolve as marketers and understanding the buyer's journey. And then we realized, hey, if we gate the content, then we're going to get more qualified leads. Well, in franchising, it's a little bit different. We're not selling end tables. We're not selling furniture. We are actually trying to find someone who's going to invest, anywhere between $400,000 and $800,000, maybe more, maybe a little less. But there's a lot of information that you have to share in a concise way. You have to, my old man used to always tell me that you have to sell the sizzle of the steak, right? And I still kind of apply that knowledge and opportunity that I got to work with my dad once upon a time in if you can give enough information to have a prospect engage, right? So we know that if you're doing a really good job and people are going to follow through your website, right? Because you're going to have probably 5 to 6 different questions you're going to answer. So as they scroll down, if you get a higher percentage of people filling out the form at the bottom of the website versus above the fold, you know you have a higher quality lead. And that's some of the things that we actually track for our brands. We look at where they're filling out the actual form. Now, the reason why is because someone's going to scroll down on their phone or on their desktop, but more likely on their phone. They're going to like what they have, this like, okay, here's the brand, here's a little bit background on the model, background on the owner, what makes them unique in the industry, what separates them from their competitors. Then there's an incredible founder video that he's speaking to you and communicating to you, and like he's the only person in your world. And then all of a sudden you come across what part of the business model is super sexy, what makes that attractive to invest into. You get a little information about the industry itself, right? Because no one wakes up in the morning thinking they want to buy a franchise. And then you find out how much it costs, and you find out how much you can make. And then their interest, jumps up 5 notches. And then you scroll down, all of a sudden there's a form with, hey, would you like to get more? Would you like an industry report, about this brand and concept? Heck yeah, I'm super excited. But I want to add one more thing and this is, again, we work with a ton of brands, over 70 brands. And I have over 70 different franchise sales organizations, internal salespeople, brokers, all working. And so again, I get all this data drop too from the sales folks and best practices. And this is what we know, to be true and best practices. The lead comes in, the downloadable content gets shot right out to them right away. Then there needs to be an email from their CRM, from their franchise salesperson, giving them, some links to some bios and some support mechanisms, some, PR links, saying that the franchise consultant is going to be calling them in, the next 5 to 10 minutes. Then all of a sudden, an automated text goes out to them. And then the first phone call should happen within the first 10 to 15 minutes. That's best practices. And we know 7 contacts in 7 days, and we know 20 to 30 contacts in the first 30 days. It's a contact sport. And you see that because you have access to the CRM and the data, and you see the deals that come out from our brands. But that's the biggest, most important that I always want to tell, emerging brands and mid-market. It's that sales is not, you just don't make one phone call and they're going to call you back, because they probably filled out between 7 to 10 different websites if they're interested, right? Because they're looking to buy a business, or they're all of a sudden they find one franchise brand, they start looking at other brands. Like you got to get to them right away and start that process.
I feel like you're preaching my doctrine here for a minute, MJ, but although the topic is not focused on this, I've got to say there are a lot of funny misconceptions about this. And the fact that if you, and a lot of people don't think of it this way, like you want to talk to them within that first little window, because that's when they're actually still thinking about your brand. They didn't go back to the board, they didn't go to the next thing. They're not whatever, they're still thinking about you. However, one other thing is also true. Let's say they're going to start filling out those 3 to 10 additional forms. You interrupt their process with a text message. You interrupt their process with a personal phone call, which most other brands that aren't using you and me aren't doing properly, right? But So you have the chance to interrupt the investigative process, and maybe they don't fill out 3 to 5 more forms. Well, now you just cut your competition in half as a franchise developer to try to sell your brand. Like, anyway, we can talk about this another time.
I mean, right on point. And that's what we try to do, is we try to educate our brands, right? I know we get positioned as the franchise marketing experts in the industry, but we've evolved to be much, much more really, and it's based on our relationship with iFranchise Group. All that is rubbed off over the years on all my account managers, account directors, and VPs, that we're much more than just franchise marketing experts. We're helping coach them through this process, and many other problems that we get to help our clients solve outside of franchise marketing.
Yeah, well, let's swing back over to that, because there are a couple of key things where I think you've got some deep insights we should pull out of your head today, MJ.
Yeah.
So let's talk a minute about like reverse engineering your franchise development advertising budgets.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you've shared with me before is that this needs to be based upon the growth goals of the organization. Do you want to speak to that for a little bit? Tell us about like how should you do this and why should you do it? Because I don't think a lot of people do.
Yeah. And one, we're super fortunate to get to work with a lot of the iFranchise Group brands. And so they come out of, the franchise, outside of franchising with them, and, they're set up for success, right? Every one of their brands. So it's really easy for us to have these conversations. It's brands that we work with outside of our franchise group is that, one, we have to determine, kind of where your average cost of acquisition is going to be. And it varies across the entire industry. Some of the factors that we look at, and we help them kind of determine that if they're outside of iFranchise Group. One is, we got to look at their franchise development website. We have to look at their franchise marketing materials. We have to look at their investment range, right? The higher the investment, the higher the acquisition cost. We have to look at, what kind of CRM they have, what the quality of their franchise development sales team. These all go into this, right? On average, it's between probably $12,000 to $15,000 is a typical acquisition, between that $400,000 to $800,000. Now, again, you have, if you've been in business for over 10 years and you got, a proven business model, I can say that because I'm not being held to compliance right now. But, if you have a proven business model, you have great financials, and you have a decent investment range, your average cost could be as low as 10 or 12,000, right? Because this is a varying aspect of every concept. This is why working with an experienced agency like Topfire really helps our clients. And we set up really good benchmarks and good expectation. If they're looking to award 7 to 10, franchises, it's really easy for us to give them a recommendation on a yearly advertising budget, right? Let's just, 12,000 times 7, that's going to be your yearly advertising budget. And then we break it up into 12 units, right? But then we go further than that because, again, our experience working all these franchise development sales teams over the year is that we know that we have to increase the advertising budget for the first 3 to 4 months, right? We got to get more leads in the sales funnel because we know towards Thanksgiving in December, we're going to reduce most of our clients' budgets down just because everything starts to slow up. And that's really when the franchise sales teams, that's when they're actually doing a really good job of awarding, a higher number of franchises towards the end of the year because people don't want to go back to work after the new year, right? So we know there are different times of the year where, lead flow is going to be higher than normal, but we also know there's a slowdown period, right before Thanksgiving through the end of the month from that standpoint. So we got to make sure we put our clients in the best position so that we have enough leads that go through the process. We know it takes 90 days to fill the franchise sales funnel. We know leads typically are not going to mature ripe in a month, 4 or 5. And if it's a higher investment, it might be longer. But typically on, the franchise deals don't come out of the franchise sales funnel until probably months 5 to 7. But do clients come out after 90-day of course? Do they come after, that 7 months of course? This is just averages that we get, from Franchise Media Update, our sister company, and, our brands over the last 10 years. So, that's the biggest part. We know that, on advertising, you're going to close around 1.5% of the advertising leads. SEO typically closes those leads between 3 and 4 points, and then PR closes between 3 and 5 percentage points. So those are the close ratios for majority of the leads. And so we have to reverse engineer based on, what our clients are looking to do, because you need between 75 to 90 leads, at least, through our data, to find the princess amongst all the frogs, right? From that standpoint. So we then can even reverse engineer how many leads it's going to take and then break that out on a monthly basis based on spend. And then it's my account managers, VPs, and account directors' job. They're digging into the campaigns on a daily and weekly basis. Their job is to analyze that data. Like I have all 5 tool, digital media ninjas that all work for me, that all did production at One Life, but the one quality they all had is they did production and understood and analyzed data and could do strategy. So they're incredibly helpful to our campaigns with our clients to, one, explain where we're at and why things are happening, but also to give them those benchmarks so they know every, $12,000 to $15,000, you should be selling a franchise. Every 75 to 90 leads, you should be selling a franchise from that standpoint.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great data. I love the insights too, sharing some of those specific data points.
Yep.
Everybody wishes they could just focus on SEO and PR, right? Because the higher conversion rates.
Yeah, of course.
You can't. So this is where also the market mix comes in. Do you mind sharing a little bit, putting you on the spot?
Yeah.
What's an ideal market mix there of a blend of PR for, let's say, an emerging brand, because they're the ones that are like usually head spin and don't know what to do. Don't be disrespectful, but like this is, you take a business owner that was a phenomenal, let's say, painter, and now he's starting to run a franchise business. It's all net new stuff. Right? Nobody trained on how to do this that was running and operating a normal business. So what are some good benchmarks they should be thinking about in terms of spend and effort and then lead flow of PR, SEO, and then PPC?
So and this is now in perfect world conditions, right? And nothing we ever deal with is in perfect world conditions, because one, we have to assess, where they're currently at, where their Google quality score is at with their website, where their validation's at, where their budget's at. But in a perfect world, emerging brands would start off with a less aggressive PR campaign, right? It's about seeding the media opportunities for the future and creating validation around their current corporate business model, right? Because the first thing we know when a prospect finds, Facebook ad, a Google ad, an organic, social, a referral, a broker, they're going to start doing research. And if you don't have media for validation around your brand, then they're going to ultimately go to the next. That's what makes emerging brands a little bit more difficult for people to invest into, because there's not as much information and research to do. Perfect spend would be, you're going to have both a Facebook and a Google advertising campaign. You're going to have a mix of public relations. And then within Google, there are many different tactics. One, there's the lookalike audience that we'll have from our 45,000 multi-unit franchisees and single unit operators. And then we have the intent to buy audience, which is folks that are looking at their competitor's franchise development site. We're going to go have a display ad, chase them around. And then we're going to have traditional pay-per-click advertising, the keywords that people are investing into that are looking to buy a business, right? And all the different keywords that surround them. Then you want to look at, social media itself is a bigger part of franchise development than most people realize. And the reason why, it's there for validation. So what we always recommend is every couple of weeks, just throw out a Facebook post, an Instagram post about the franchise opportunity. It could be a franchisee, it could be some of the great content that's being written for them via blog or PR. But you need to be able to seed their social channels, because we know for an emerging brand, typically the first couple of franchisees are going to come from someone the business owner already influences or one of their customers. So it's super important to make sure you're positioning, promoting your franchise opportunity. But you're going to look at, an omni-channel, diverse marketing strategy that's going to be surrounded around Facebook and Google advertising, because they are the lead generation tactic. Organic SEO and content development is really important in today's market, because that's what ultimately long-term is going to lower your acquisition costs down. Public relations, see, most people don't explain the benefit of this aspect of PR. It's that, one, PR is awesome, right? It's going to generate some great media. People are going to read it. The founder, the owners get their face on publications and articles. Everyone loves it. But as a digital media expert, there's so much more to PR. PR actually creates some of the best tier 1 and tier 3 backlinks on this planet. And so all that PR that comes through, it's great. You're going to put on your media room. You're going to send it through the nurturing campaigns through your CRM. But literally those tier 1 are actually going to create anywhere between 2,000 to 4,000 more unique visitors to your site. And those tier 1 and tier 3 backlinks help increase your Google quality score. This is the part that 99% of the folks we talk with have never heard of before. So emerging brands that have a brand new franchise development website, they need a lot of love from SEO so that Google starts to rank you and become searchable. You got to do a lot of work to get them even to know who you are, and then eventually figure out who your buyer is. But PR and those backlinks help increase the Google quality score. The higher your Google quality score, the less per click, and then ultimately your leads come down as a cost per lead. And then also it increases your impressions. That means your ads can be shown to more franchise prospects than buyers based on your audience. So that's where that mix in a perfect world for a brand, both as an emerging brand and mid-market brand.
That's fantastic. And I know, and it changes, right, over time, right? You say
Yeah.
less up front of one of the PR. As the brand starts to build, you can build a little bit more into that. Like
Yeah.
where you're the expert, I couldn't even speak to it other than I see and hear a lot about it.
Yeah.
But that it's going to shift. Your first 6 months is going to be different than your second
Yep.
6 months, and your second year is going to be different than your first year. And
absolutely, and just it's because of validation. It's because of your presence. It's because, I mean, one of the great things when you start doing Facebook and digital advertising, people are still seeing your ad. They might not click on it, but they're going to recognize that brand the next time they see you at a franchise trade show, or if they all of a sudden drive down the street and they see your brand, on a location and go, holy crap, they're looking for franchisees that you can invest into that. All of a sudden you see them somewhere else. So it's all about that name recognition. That's the best thing about advertising. Or I should say one of the best things about advertising is that you're helping to promote your brand regardless, right? You're going to get so many people to look at that ad on a monthly basis. Not everyone, right? Because on average, a 3 to 4, maybe 3 to 5% conversion ratio on ads is a pretty good number. But you have a whole bunch of people staring at your ad, and eventually they might just Google you, and that's how they come to organic, side of it, or a direct response, from that standpoint.
Yeah, no, I hear you. You're bringing up something I want to shift to from MJ about metrics, because this is an area I think a lot of people fall short. They're not paying attention to what is, and you've talked a lot about customer acquisition costs. We haven't talked a ton about cost per lead, cost per click yet. But I want to have you maybe share some insights about what are the acquisition costs that a brand should be paying attention to make sure that they're managing their marketing spend to drive real results.
Yeah, the acquisition cost that we typically see, again, if you have less than 10 units, and again, it depends on those factors we kind of talked about earlier, where the investment range is at, where the validation is at. But typically emerging brands are a little bit higher. They're going to be in that $12,000 to $15,000 acquisition cost they need to keep an eye on. And it's some of the reasons why emerging brands and market brands are always trying to go after, multi-unit opportunities. It's because that transactional cost really reduces down their franchise acquisition cost, right? And that's a big part of it. But doing that, this is why, again, if anyone's ever, seen me at one of the franchise shows talking, they know, given my speech or the presentation, one of the biggest things I tell the franchise owners or the people in charge of running the campaigns on our client side is you literally need to take a class or search YouTube and learn about Google Analytics, right? Google Analytics tells the story, and that's a big part of what we try to do with our clients is tell the story based on data, right? Our entire franchise strategy is based on benchmarks that we've talked about today, where we should be on a cost, of a lead cost. So, first 90 days, an average Google advertising campaign will be $150 to $185, right? But over those 90 days, our job is to optimize the campaign, see how the market reacts to the message, and start to make, slight tactical changes in the ad, do A/B testing, do additional carousel ads. If our clients don't have a founder video, we're encouraging them to get a founder video, or we can do a video just like this so that we can put on the advertising campaign, because we'll see an immediate jump in leads and a cost per lead that will come down both on Facebook and Google. But that's a big part of it. But that's how we monitor. The data that I share with you is the data I share with every one of my prospects as they go through the process. And my team continues that, right? We try to our best to stay. Some of the first, clients that start to work with us, their average cost could be $18,000 in the first 4 or 5 months, but over a 6 to 8 month period, as they start selling franchises, they'll be well within that segment. And some actually, right now, we're running around $8,000 to $9,000 on an acquisition cost. And that's part of this data. We're data geeks. Like, you have to be a data geek. If your nose is not in analytics, if your nose is not understanding where your market is at and what is happening, you're just missing out huge. And we want to educate our clients because it's a lot of hard work. And it's, you know, my team gives me, you know, a lot of crap because I make it sound so easy, you know, on the calls and the consultations, but it isn't. It's super hard. Like our team's got to roll their sleeves up every morning. They are, the first hour of their day is they're in all their clients' analytics, all the data. So we're trying to interpret it on a daily basis to see if we can see any kind of trend so that we can help our clients ultimately reduce the ultimate, you know, cost of a lead and acquisition cost.
Yeah. So you mentioned that MJ, that the first 90 days, you might be looking at $150, you know, cost per lead.
Yeah, absolutely. And on Facebook, thank you for reminding. Facebook, you're typically going to see $85 to $100 cost of lead, but that'll come down over that 90 days to about probably $50 to $75. Again, depends on the aspects that we talked about earlier. But that's where that is at, and it's so important to continue to focus on that and ask about that. It's like one of the very first things we do in every one of our process or progress calls is update them on the KPIs. We have a whole KPI report that we send out that they have access to. But if you're not paying attention to it, you're missing the boat.
Yeah, well, because well, and everything's interconnected. That's what I love about what you've shared is we talked about first about the website, right? Like if you don't have a good website, your quality scores go down, your cost of advertising goes up, and also your conversion rates go down because there's not a match between your ads and your content on your website. Yeah. So a lot of people neglect these things, but they don't realize the social reinforcement of Facebook. I used to be a huge skeptic of Facebook. I think we talked about this when I was but I used to think it was a joke, and then I started to see just the tremendous results people were having because of the power of the targeting.
It's the lookalike audience. It's a proprietary list that only we have. And it literally, you know, on some of our bigger brands that have a national rollout on the advertising, it represents close to a 10 million person target audience. Based on, you know, how we've been running the campaigns the last 10 years or last 5 years. So yeah, it's that lookalike audience that we use, you know, and upload it to all of our, you know, advertising campaigns for both Facebook and Google. That's where the tremendous results, and we have emerging brands selling multi-unit deals within the first 4 or 5 months. So we're generating a lot of great results and outcomes.
That's awesome. But it's all based upon the data, and it's also based upon interconnectivity between, you know, most people say I'll skip on the PR because I don't really have any cool things to promote. I haven't sold my first deal. But they're thinking about it backwards, right? Because the PR is placing your content and backlinking from.
It's indoor plumbing, as I kind of use my, you know, acronyms and kind of experiences. If your PR and website are not connected, you're going to lose it to the internet. If your social channels and videos, YouTube, Vimeo, are not connected, you're just missing out on just so much great action. And this is, you know, you a little bit more, you know, I was called a mad scientist early on in my career, based on, you know, Google used to do, you know, house calls, you know, up in Portland, Oregon, where we started, you know, Handyman Online / Home Advisor. And I got to learn that entire aspect of how the algorithm works and what is needed. Then I learned the entire social side. And so, you know, in these digital media meetings, I'm like, we need to pull some backlinks, we need some content, we need some PR, we need some downloadables, we need advertising, we need PR, we need stories on this, you know, this target, we need press releases so we can backlink. And it was just this big thing. And that I was mixing and matching, and it was being all customized based on our client's audience, right? That's, you got to understand what your audience is thinking. You got to understand what their buyer journey is, so that you can be either disruptive or you could place information in front of them to make those easy decisions to want to click on it and come visit your client's website.
Yeah, I think you've kind of nailed it here. The mix and the interconnectivity, tracking the data and the metrics. MJ, as we wrap this up, how would you summarize maybe like 3 things any emerging brand, any established brand they should be doing right now, based upon what we talked about, that will help them to improve that franchise development marketing strategy?
Yeah. The first thing is they should, one, literally learn Google Analytics so they can have educated conversations with their internal marketing folks or outsourced marketing folks, right? That's where it all starts and stops with me, you know, because when the clients are educated, they can ask good questions. The more educated they are, the better the quality campaigns that come out. 2 is having downloadable content above the fold with a good call to action and value prop. Those lead magnets are huge if they're developed properly. They're ultimately going to help drive sales. They're going to drive engagement, and they're going to be hugely beneficial to your franchise development sales folks. And then the third one, I mean, you got to build. You should develop founder videos. That's typically where we see the CEO or the president of the franchise development side. You have an opportunity to look them in the eyes, just like we're doing today, and talk to your audience. And you have a way to communicate the passion of the brand, your passion for the brand, and tell them what you think, is the aspect of the business model that people should look at. Why it's why you should invest into it. What makes you unique. You get to talk about, all the success your current franchise partners are having. Why the industry is so hot and why they need to look at it not today, but for the next 10 years. Having an engaging founder video, media sizzle reel is so much more important today than it was 5 years ago, including franchisee testimonials. And if you're an emerging brand or don't have franchisees, have other people within the actual senior corporate executive team talk about different aspects of why people are going to get top-notch customer service, how they're going to invest their time, and from business consulting, how they're going to help with their local marketing. Like, videos are great. They're going to be played on. And then if you have a great brand that plays well on YouTube, you have an opportunity to get really cost-effective YouTube advertising, which is another mix that we haven't talked about, but it's for those brands that have really good engagement.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's a lot. I mean, we didn't jump into YouTube. That might be another topic.
Yeah.
An effective.
Yeah. And there's one more thing too. I mean, this is what and I'll kind of sum up a couple more things. When we look at this, the franchise development website plays a major role, right? You need to have a quality franchise development site that can attract the right audience and convert it. You need to have that downloadable content. You need to have a founder video. You need to have, as we've learned with you, Dave, having a quality CRM also improves close rates, acquisition costs, lead costs. Having a good CRM that actually does the nurturing campaign, automatic text messaging is huge. And then having a franchise development sales team that understands that this is an aggressive play, that they need to be, following up with their prospects. If not, guess what? Someone else is. From that standpoint, those are the keys to the success of franchise development from emerging mid-market and the legacy brands we work with. I mean, we see this as classic examples of what they do at a high level and how they process leads and how they, it's a lead until they die or buy.
Yeah, I love it. A lead until they die or buy. We should end on that note, right?
Yep, we should.
No, that's a great wrap up point. I also had to write down your dad's quote earlier on too, because that one cracks me up. But awesome, guys. Tons of data packed in here. You don't need a summary from me because you just got it from MJ. But take a look at what they do. Topfire Media, they're a great partner of ours, and also take a look at these steps are very actionable. MJ, thanks for providing actionable insights that can drive people's success as they're trying to build a franchise business.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to jump on the podcast with you today. And I appreciate it. We appreciate the relationship. And, obviously you guys get to see all the hard work from my team, putting all that energy into our brands, and you see the result of all the leads coming through and all the franchise deals coming out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we love it. Great partnership and also great results. Thanks a lot, MJ.
Yeah. Thank you. See you now.